Hello and welcome to this first session in Unit 508 on project management, where we're going to look at project governance. Now, one of the biggest challenges in managing a project nowadays is keeping control of everything. Governance is the whole thing, as mentioned in the introduction video, and wow, what a project that was. 57 stories built in 19 days. That needs a structure and a framework for that to be successful. And one of the main things in that structure or that framework is assigning responsibilities and holding people accountable, and that's part of the governance. We hopefully have that in the normal workplace all of the time, but then it's normal and everyone's used to it, and that's been built up over time. And when it's a project, that can be slightly different. So we're going to examine some of these areas in this session. And in that article that was linked to the video, which you hopefully looked at, defining roles and responsibilities in project management, David Barker mentioned PRINCE2, which is a methodology that we'll be looking at when we look at some project management models at the end. So first in this session, though, let's have a look at the objectives. So main aim for this session is to understand the requirements of project governance. By the end of this session, you should be able to describe the roles and responsibilities of key project personnel. Now, there are lots of different versions of that out there, so we're going to be looking at 4 key personnel. That's the project manager, the project sponsor, the project owner, and the project coordinator. And then secondly, you should be able to describe project governance requirements, governance structure, the lines of reporting, and the frequencies and channels of communication. So let's get started. For any project to be successful, we need to ensure that everyone knows their roles and responsibilities. So not just their roles and responsibilities, but everybody's. And especially in large, complex ones where there are many people who have joint responsibilities, say for creating something or approving something. Sometimes it's pretty straightforward. In a small project, someone will be responsible for writing a document, and someone else will be responsible for approving it. But in bigger, more complex ones, there is lots of situations where other people have a hand in the creation, and then others have varying levels of approval and need to finalize things. And for any project in this sort of situation, but especially the larger and the more complex ones, creating some sort of responsibility sort of matrix, and we'll look at some later, at the beginning will help define and communicate everyone's roles and responsibilities across the whole team. It helps set out some expectations and ensures people know what's expected of them. So let's have a look at some generic roles and responsibilities in project management. Now, in many roles, many projects, people will have different roles, and it's going to depend on the project, the organisation, the size, and it's going to be different for everybody, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And this is just a generic sort of chart which shows the owner, the project sponsor, project manager, the project coordinator, and the subject matter experts which sort of form the team, and other stakeholders that might be involved. So what are they actually responsible for? Well, the project owner, or sometimes known as the executive sponsor, is responsible for setting the vision, the direction, providing support, and providing any arbitration on any issues. They ultimately have authority over the project. So that'll be they're providing the funding, resolving issues, changing to the scope, approving the major deliverables, providing any high-level direction, but they may delegate day-to-day tactical management of that to the project sponsor, as the project sponsor is there to represent the owner on the day-to-day basis and makes the decisions for that sponsor, because they can't be there all the time, so it makes their decisions that require their approval. So he's their spokesperson in some respects, I would say. And if the decision is big enough or large enough or requires that sort of approval, they might take it to the owner for resolution. And then there's the project manager, and the project manager runs the project from day to day on behalf of the project sponsor. The project manager ensures that the products that the project is meant to be delivering are of the required quality, and therefore that they're delivering the benefits that were set out in the project business case, and that they're produced in the agreed time and to the agreed cost. So he's overseeing the execution, assigning, monitoring and controlling of the project, and those responsibilities can include stuff such as directing the project team, managing the project plan, maintaining a risk register, issue register and change control logs, and we're going to talk about those later on in this unit, and reporting on progress to the project sponsor and other stakeholders. And he's going to be helped by the project coordinator, and their role is really to make sure all the tasks that the project manager set outside are completed on time, within budget, and they meet the quality standards, and that's going to include responsibilities such as reporting on and coordinating project management activities, resources, equipment, information, assigning tasks to the internal teams and assisting with the sort of schedule of those tasks, monitoring the project's progress and handling the issues that arise, acting, in fact, the coordinator is the main point of contact really and communication for all the project's participants, the sort of liaison, working with the project manager to sort of eliminate any blocks or anything that's slowing the project down, using tools to monitor working hours, plans and expenditure, and creating and maintaining comprehensive project documents, plans, and making sure reports are moved up the chain of command. And with all these different responsibilities flying around, and I mentioned before something called a responsibilities matrix, one simple effective tool we can use is a Reiki matrix. So basically a responsibility matrix, often used in the sort of planning stages and then used to monitor things as they go along and check who should have been doing what and where, because it shows their responsibilities. So what does it outline? Well, it puts together some... It's an acronym, really, I suppose you could say. Reiki approves the deliverables, reviews the deliverables, responsible for creating the deliverables, I for providing input, and then many of them have had added to them, as people do as they develop things. N, which is that they're notifiable when a delivery is complete, and M, that they're the person who manages or keeps that deliverable, so they're the person responsible for it once it's completed. And I suppose looking at an example is the best way to do this. So coming on screen now is simply put, it's a grid or a matrix showing who's responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be consulted, who must be kept informed at every significant step as we go through the project. Enhances the chances of success there and communicating to everybody so that they're aware. So in this simple example matrix, we can see that the project plan is to be created by the manager. Okay, so the project manager is responsible for creating it. The project sponsor has to approve it. The project team are involved in reviewing it. And then the project coordinator is responsible for managing it, so that's keeping it, and therefore N for being notified when certain parts are complete, because if he isn't notified, he can't maintain that project plan. So, simple grid, which sort of will be part of the project plan and will show who's responsible for different parts. We'll just outline the project life cycle before we get into the governance process, and we've got the initiation, the planning, the execution, the monitoring and controlling, and then the closing and evaluation, and we'll be looking at parts of this as we go through this unit. But in that initiation and planning stage is when we're going to set the governance. It's when it's kicked off with both the team and the clients. That's when things are going to be put together, and then it'll be firmed up as we go into the planning stage. And when the project's first established, depending on the size of the project or the sort of complexity, there may well be a steering committee or a project board that are there to establish the structure and the governance, and put the team together, and possibly they will work with the owner's brief and bring together the relevant stakeholders and establish the requirements, gain agreement, outline the objectives and goals and firm them up, and establish a reporting and communication process. There are many views and opinions out there on what project governance actually is, but generally it's accepted and suggested in 2006 in the International Journal of Project Management that governance of a project involves a set of relationships between the project's management, its sponsors, its owner, and other stakeholders. Furthermore, it went on to propose that project governance provides the structure through which objectives for the project are set and the means of attaining those objectives and monitoring the performance, and the project board and committee will have a big say in that, because they have the overall authority and accountable for its success or its failure. Therefore, members of the project board steering committee have got to have sufficient authority to carry out their responsibilities. As a minimum, you'd expect the project board would include the project sponsor, senior users, senior suppliers, and the project manager, and perhaps the project co-org to sort of take the notes and details of what was going on. Because they can have wide-ranging collective responsibilities, such as accepting and demonstrating ownership for the project, working as a team to provide collective and unified direction, facilitating cross-functional working, ensuring that the project is structured and recognised and respected by differing line management, committing all of the resources required to successfully complete the project, effective decision making, including risk, issue and change management, the responsibility of project assurance and quality control, ensuring that timely and effective communication within the project and with the external stakeholders, ensuring that the project deliverables are reliable, sustainable and can be maintained effectively, and that effective delegation with appropriate project tolerances and exception management processes are in place. Therefore, governance of project management is key. All projects require an effective governance structure to be successful, but it's going to depend on the project, the organisation, situation, how exactly it's set out, so how your organisation operates. This view is also expressed by the Association of Project Managers. We've got a diagram on screen now which shows that the governance of project management, that GOPM, is a subset of the corporate governance, so the way the whole organisation is governed, but that most of the methodologies and activities of the day-to-day management of the individual project is going to sit outside of that corporate governance. So governance will impact on policies, processes and procedures, the way documents are put together, because there'll be some sort of organisational corporate governance on those. But then documents like the PID, the Reiki matrix, things that some of those things we've already discussed, and the project communications plan is going to be set differently than those, because that might have some sort of corporate governance pull on it, how you communicate within your organisation. But interesting to note there that some of it lies within corporate governance and some of it outside, but it's going to depend, as I said, on your organisation. However, there are some key factors. And those factors for good governance are having a good sponsor, knowing who they are, ensuring they're involved, that they're very visible, because they're responsible for the business case, the vision, the resourcing and communicating with them. Having a good plan, not just in your head or scribbled on the back of a fab packet. You might know it, but does everybody else know it? Is it clear? Is there clear reporting? You need to keep the decision makers informed, everybody informed really, so that people feel comfortable that they know what's going on. And that'll include the stakeholders, and engaging stakeholders is massive, so they don't feel that they're missed or hidden. If they're engaged, they're going to raise questions and issues, and that's good. And they need to be set out so that they know that they've got a chance at some point in that clear reporting to talk. 5, are we learning lessons? It's about that, creating a culture of continuous improvement that we discussed. And is there clear roles and responsibilities? We've just been through that. And are things stopped when it's appropriate? Better to stop when things are going wrong than to waste time and resources carrying on. So it needs to be set out at the start that, you know, someone's got responsibility for stopping things if they're going wrong. Right then, before we do an activity, let's just have a quick recap. Our overall aim was to understand the requirements of project governance. We said by the end of the session you'd be able to describe the roles and responsibilities of key personnel. And I think we've been through those. 1.2, describe the project governance requirements, governance structure, lines of reporting. We looked at lines of reporting when you look at the sort of organisational chart that we drew out. And frequencies and channels of communication, we're going to look at that in an activity because it's going to be specific to your organisation. Right then, for this activity I'm going to get you to do, I want you to think about some projects or a project that you've been involved in within your organisation. So that could be one that you've managed or that you've been a key participant in. There's some articles and some info in the resources around this, but you need to think about a project you've been involved in. So I want you to give the details on the project, so the scope and the objectives. I want you to identify the main roles and responsibilities within that project and make sure you show your own in that. And then I want you to describe how the governance was structured and how the reporting was carried out. So what were the lines of communication? How were things communicated? What was the frequency? What were the methods? So you might have had monthly project meetings. You might have had weekly update reports you had to do. You may have had Gantt charts or spreadsheets or something that you had to fill in, or you may have had to do a progress report and send it in on regular day, or you might have had weekly or daily face-to-face meetings. I don't know. So it's a be dependent on what you are, so you've got to focus on the frequency and the methods that you're using as communicating. There's a worksheet for you to do that. When you've uploaded that, you can do the next session.